there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is content farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
The Bulgarians are up to their old tricks, this time working to discredit MEP Thomas Waits, who is the EU Parliament Rapporteur for Macedonia, working on the EU integration report for Macedonia. The issue? Well, you'll never guess. The Macedonian identity, of course. One of the amendments offered by one Bulgarian MEP was to place the word, quote, current, unquote, in front of, quote, Macedonian identity, unquote, or, quote, Macedonian language, unquote. Did you get all that? Macedonians, of course, are hoping that this report, which was due to be voted on this past week, and now be delayed until June 24, would go some ways in helping to solidify the Macedonian identity and language within EU documents and within the EU in general. But no, the Bulgarians cannot stand the idea of a Macedonian identity or language that they cannot claim to be the parents of. We'll discuss all this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin and Jason in Skopje, Macedonia.
How you doing, Cvetin?
Good. Ready to discuss our favorite topic.
Yes. We are obligated to discuss the Bulgarians in each and every podcast. This is episode 190. We are getting very close to 200. And today is Sunday, June 8th, episode 190. Before I jump into that, though, I want to just mention this briefly. And some of our listeners may have seen this on the interwebs and the Google machine. Morten Harket is the voice and the face of a-ha, the Norwegian pop group that burst onto the scene in 1985 with their major hit "Take on Me," which became actually a major hit after the video came out. And I think everybody of a certain age knows the song and the video. They may not know Morten by name, but Morten Harket is the lead singer. Morten has a connection to Macedonia, but the reason I mention all this is because this past week Morten announced that he has Parkinson's disease, which is not fatal, but it eventually robs you of movement. I think the most famous person right now that has Parkinson's disease is Michael J. Fox, who played Marty McFly in the films, and he's done a lot of others. And so he's kind of been the face. Morten obviously is going to get the best treatment and whatnot, but Parkinson's disease robs you of your movement, including your voice. So not sure about the future of a-ha, but Morten came to Macedonia in October of 2007, and this is the connection. At the time, the government of Macedonia was planning on hosting a conference at Lake Okra, the Dialogue Among Religions and Civilizations. My friend Zoran Yalevsky was the ambassador from Macedonia to the United States at the time. He was part of the planning process. And the organizers wanted somebody to come and be the headline speaker for the Saturday night dinner, and with somebody with a philosophical, theological mindset. And I'd been an a-ha fan, and I knew that Morten had that philosophical, theological mindset because he actually studied ancient Greek at university, so he could better understand the New Testament. So I reached out to him through another Norwegian friend of mine, Leif Holstad, who has since passed away, who was the head of a NGO in Norway called Marita, which helped young people stay off of drugs. And we had a Marita organization also in Macedonia, and I was on the board there. And so we invited Morten, and he came. Yeah. he came to the conference, and he spoke. He didn't sing. And he brought his friend Sigurðin Einarsson, who was a partner and collaborator at the time. And basically, that's how our film, A Name is a Name, came to be, because both men spent the weekend there. I got to hang out with them, which was in and of itself quite cool. But they learned about the injustices of the name issue. They spoke a lot with a lot of folks there, including, at the time, Prime Minister Gruevski. And then I went to Oslo this was October of 2007. I went to Oslo in May of 2008 and talked again to Morten and Sigurðin, and that's kind of how the whole thing happened. So without him coming to Macedonia that October of 2007, there never would have been a film, A Name is a Name, which, by the way, is a song from his album Letter from Egypt. So that's kind of the backstory. But
very unlikely episode in the Macedonia name dispute to have the
exactly, yes,
beloved singer. I was a teenager when that song showed up, and I didn't know it's technically possible to do something like that. To do that video, to switch from drawn into in live in person acting, and and that he would then become a voice for Macedonia. That was very, very interesting episode.
Yeah, so we're grateful to him, and so I would ask, as I wrote a little article about it, and I've been praying for him and his family every Wednesday morning for many years, well over a decade, and so I know most of my Macedonian friends and family are believers, and so I hope everybody would pray for him and his family in order to deal with this, because it's not going to go away. There's no cure. Yeah. He's getting the very best treatment. So anyway, you that I think you put it correctly there. You said unlikely. So, but strange things, the way things happen in life.
The Greeks didn't see that coming.
No, they didn't. But one thing we can always count on is the Greeks and the Bulgarians to object to Macedonia, existing as an independent nation state with a Macedonian language and a Macedonian identity and a Macedonian church and Macedonian culture, Macedonian history, and our friends the Bulgarians are up to it again this time, as we have said many times during these podcasts and in the many writings I've done, etc. We always knew this was going to happen once Macedonia, under the government of Zoran Zaev, gave in to the Greeks on the name issue. We knew that somebody else was going to ask for another pound of flesh, and that's what's happening. So did I get that right in the monologue? So we've got this EU integration report that was supposed to be adopted by the EU Foreign Affairs Committee this past week, I think on June 4, I believe it was. And Thomas Waits, who is he's an Austrian MEP, member of the European Parliament, and he is putting together this report. The Greeks, the Bulgarians, the Bulgarians are trying to discredit him. They accused him of this, that, and the other. Maybe you can explain that a little bit more. But now the report won't be until voted on until June 24. But I think one of the key things in there is the Bulgarians offered all these amendments, and one of them was to put the word current, present, meaning now, in front of. So the current Macedonian identity, the current Macedonian language, meaning, anyway. What else can you tell?
It's a big mess now. So this guy, this Austrian member of European Parliament, he's a Green member from the Green Party. He's absolutely no friend of Vumerov, Macedonia. I mean, politically of the right. His, most relevant political intervention before this was to go after Orban, to attack him. So you know how the Greens have developed now into the pro-war party in Europe. So it's a very interesting change in this regard. But he decided to try and help Vumerov, or the government we have. Mickovsky has been saying that we need some kind of a guarantee from the European Union that when we accept, or if we accept the current Bulgarian demand for changes in the constitution, that this will be the last thing. And Bulgarian officials have been saying, no, there's a bunch of other things they will have to implement, changing of history books, changing of entire historical narrative. So we're stuck in this for a while, but officially Vumerov is asking for guarantees, and so far the previous government, ASDSM and DUI, they got the German Bundestag, the parliament, to adopt a resolution. They acknowledge Macedonia as like a national identity of its own. I'm not sure if it contained the sentence of that it's old, ancient, but this is what we're asking for, that institutions acknowledge this, so that when Bulgaria comes out with demands afterwards saying that uh, they acknowledge the Macedonian nation and language, but only like as something that developed like 50 years ago. This term current, which they're now coming up with, that VMRO, the government, we could point to resolutions by the European Council, the European Parliament, the German Parliament, the European Commission, countering this, and hopefully it will help us out in the coming disputes. So this is the annual progress report. We used to have big fights over the use of the term Macedonian. So Greeks would block any mention of Macedonian as adjective. Previous rapporteurs, that's the official title of this guy, I would try to insert the word in obscure places, like they would say the Macedonian Forestry Company or a public utility company or something stupid like that.
Right. Oh.
And they would use it a couple of times in the report, and then the Greeks would try to delete it. They would say, no, it has to be the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia's forestry company, and you can't use this especially you cannot use this to denote identity and nationality and language, the word Macedonian. So then they would scrub this from the report. They would cry and shout and annoy members of European Parliament until they would cave, and then our officials would refuse to accept the report if it does not contain the word Macedonian anywhere. So this was a back and forth we played. This time, to placate our government, Weitz and a couple of other members of European Parliament from Baltic countries, from Western European countries, from Croatia, they proposed amendments or lines in the report using Macedonian for the identity. So like this would be like a strong, in our view, strong report with strong acknowledgement of the Macedonian identity. And then Mickovski came out and, maybe he spoke too soon. He said that this is something that the parliament is supposed to adopt. So maybe he evoked the Bulgarians to this, or, they probably would have reacted anyway. But as soon as he made this statement, there was a reaction back home that, okay, maybe this is something that he will accept as a concession. And if this goes through parliament, that he might, go ahead and put the constitutional changes to a vote, that this would be good enough as a concession, as a guarantee from the EU. Of course, the Bulgarians immediately, they had a vote in their parliament, unanimously adopting another resolution calling on the European Union to treat their dispute with us as a European Union dispute with Macedonia, accusing us of violating rights of Bulgarians, of violence toward them, etc.
You're genociding the Bulgarians.
Yeah, it's pretty. So. It has. It points to a number of.
Yeah.
There is a court case coming up of an organizer, Bulgarian activist from Bitola, funnily called Ljubcho Georgievski, who is on trial for hate speech. So this is going to be a big issue if he's sentenced for hate speech. This will be the next dispute. So at the moment, they succeeded in postponing the vote on the resolution, but it's possible that it will go through. If the other parties in the European Parliament react and say, okay, listen, we can't have Albania and Montenegro advancing and then Macedonia not advancing, it's stupid, and now they're giving you an exit, they're giving you a way to, that you can say, like in 2 months when this thing will be up for vote, that Bulgarians can say, okay, now you have your guarantee, now you're the unreasonable ones, now you vote on the our demand on the constitutional amendments, and so it's plausible that this is used as the guarantee, but if the idea was that this goes quietly through the parliament, the European Parliament, that didn't happen. So now we have an all-out argument over the report.
Right. Yeah, that's a good summary. And again, it's worth mentioning again. I think this goes back to the Bulgarian demand that Macedonia once again change its constitution to suit the Bulgarians, demand that Bulgarians as a people be part of the Macedonian constitution preamble as a state-forming people along with everybody else on the planet, including the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites and the Etruscans and everybody that's been gone for ages. So that's what they're doing. And you brought up a very good point there, I think, about the whole, the Bulgarians say this is no longer a bilateral dispute because it was part of the so-called French proposal, so therefore it's an EU dispute. It's a dispute between Macedonia and the EU, which is too cute by half. Everybody knows that this is, it's just, and again, the Bulgarians are going to come up with something else after this. But I think it's also worth mentioning, reiterating again, that the Macedonian government has come up with what I would call an elegant solution that, sure, will include the Bulgarians in the constitution, but it will take effect, the changes to the constitution will take effect once Macedonia joins the European Union, which is, 10, 12, 15 years down the road. But they won't budge. And they won't budge because, and I think this points to the fact that they're not willing to budge on that because they have other things lined up behind this that they want to use to put another veto on Macedonia down the road. Yeah. I think that's the reason. And it's interesting when you look at the Bulgarian media. So, is it Novinite?
Okay.
The Bulgarian was reporting on this, and their headline is "Behind Closed Doors: How Bulgarian Pressure Just Rocked North Macedonia's EU Path." I mean, they're just gloating about it. Or then of course my favorite Bulgarian journalist, who I love to hate, is Georgi Gotev from EU Active and EU Alive. He writes a whole article about this and the so-called scandal with Vates, and in it Gotev writes, with North Macedonian officials, with North Macedonian actors, 8 North Macedonian MPs, with North Macedonian officials. I mean, it's just kind of, he goes out of his way to insult Macedonians. Now, I used to be very good at this, and I'm not so good anymore, but I've saved a lot of tweets. I mean, I guess everybody does that. So, and I don't know if he ever deleted this one, but in March 19, 2019, there was a thread in which he said, quote, "North Macedonians exist since Yugoslavia fabricated them," unquote. This is who we're dealing with, and he's a journalist based in Brussels, and he has influence, and he has a platform.
They write like normal-looking reports on other topics in his outlets, Euractiv, and then when he gets down to writing about Macedonia, it's usually like super unhinged and completely like out of left field compared to his other writings. And they're accusing this Austrian Green MEP of corruption because he was meeting Macedonian officials in the course of preparing this report, which is literally what he should be doing. Like, they're coming to this country and they're meeting government officials, opposition, NGOs, etc. I assume also Bulgarian representatives, although maybe he had more than his fill of meeting them in Brussels. I think one of the issues is that he hasn't met at all or sufficiently with Bulgarians in Macedonia. But they're trying to spin this to look like a corruption scandal because an MEP is supposed to officially report his meetings with other governments in some registry, and they're not super accurate with this. So they usually do this, I guess, at the end of the year or at the end of the 6-month period or something. And he did not report immediately. I met Mitskovsky today, I met Philip tomorrow, I see him tomorrow. And they're trying to make this appear as corruption, but he's literally the reporter on Macedonia. This is literally what he should be doing. Right. But they're trying to make it look like he was paid by us. Right. And if anything, like, he's an anti-Orban guy, he would be like, he would love to attack us. He would love to go hard on the government in Macedonia politically. We've seen a bunch of those people in the past. Except that at this moment, I guess there is some consensus at this level in the EU to give it a shot, to try to give us something, and then push us to, okay, now we're giving you a guarantee, now you do what the Bulgarians wanted, and let's put this behind us. So at the moment he's playing ball, trying to get both us and the Bulgarians moving forward, and they're making him a corrupt,
Right.
Like they're accusing him of corruption.
Yeah, well, this I have a quote here for you on that. This is according to the media outlet Politico Europe. Quote, and this is Thomas Waits speaking. Quote: Bulgarian politicians are doing everything they can to knock down the report, including smear campaigns, fake accusations of being corrupt, fake accusations of being biased. And then the Political article says, quote, he being Waits, he showed Political several threatening messages he had received after his phone number was leaked on Bulgarian extreme right social media accounts, unquote. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm working on an article, which I'll send to you next week. You know, Bulgarian, they're just being thugs. They're engaged in thuggish behavior. And,
Yeah, it's very...
and which is unfortunate.
Mitskovsky is now upping the ante as well. They're saying, okay, you have the political system where you put minorities in the constitution, so you do it for us. We tell them, okay, let's have some reciprocity. Why don't you acknowledge the Macedonian minority? Well, we don't have this level of minority protection. So, and you know, you're asking somebody to do something, but you say that this is not something that you yourself would do, that your standards are too low. So now Mitskovsky is saying, okay, you have a standard of having some kind of a commission on minorities, and you have, I don't know, Roma, Turks. They're okay now. We insist that you respond in what is your standard of minority rights, which means you add a Macedonian to this commission. So, you know, it's just normal relationship between two sovereign countries. You want to have some reciprocity. If you don't, then it's just one side bullying, pushing the other, and this is going to keep worsening relations between what should be like very close countries. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, and, you know, after the disaster in Kochini, Bulgarian medical doctors and they stepped up and they took some of the severely wounded, as well as other European countries, all the way up in Northern Europe, I think in Lithuania as well. Greece did as well. So, and that's good and that's right, and you know we need to recognize that. But when it comes to this specific issue about the Macedonians, just allowing Macedonians to be known for who and what they are, which is Macedonians, and forget about the debates about how far back it goes in history. Who cares? It doesn't. That's not the Macedonian identity. The Macedonians have an identity. It's called Macedonian, and a language called Macedonian. Period. End of story. That's it. And they just cannot let go of that for whatever reason.
but it's not going to even...
So, you know why? Sorry. The reason they don't, in my opinion, is because they're insecure in their own identity.
I mean, they're not... obviously, no, Bulgaria and Serbia and Greece and Turkey gave the most assistance as the closest countries. So after the Kochani disaster, the worst injured kids were sent to the closest large medical centers, and you know there was a long lines of people donating blood for the injured in Sofia. So this was like a grand gesture. At the same time, you know, you have to explain to these kids that you're blocking their approach to a
future,
you know, European Union passport, and funding that would mean infrastructure, better roads, better hospitals in Macedonia. And you know, Bulgaria at the moment is blocking this and has been for years, and it's very difficult to get past it. Like, I don't know.
Right.
What's the strategy there? But it's not getting better.
Yeah, it's worth reiterating. Macedonia put in its formal application to join the EU 20 years ago, 2005. So, and here we are 2 decades later, into our 3rd decade soon. So, anyway, let's talk a little bit about politics in Macedonia in terms of the government. I think last time we talked, Miskolsky was talking about a government reshuffle, but after the local elections, Arben Taravari is out. There's been some other movements with the ethnic Albanians in government. What's going on?
So, Taravari hasn't joined DUI yet, but it's going in that direction. They'll probably coordinate for the local elections. He's hoping that he will secure his seat as mayor of Gostivar, which he would usually win with Macedonian votes there, this time with the DUI votes. At the same time, he lost a bunch of people from his own party who decided to remain in the government. So 2 members of parliament of the 5 he had resigned, and they're allowing other officials other members on the list to join the parliament from the Vlen coalition. His deputy prime minister for good governance, for anti-corruption, has left him, so he's trying to remain in the government. He's going to be replaced by a person from broadly his grouping to be healthcare minister instead of him. So he lost, we're guessing, a big chunk of his party, and then there is an issue whether DUI will take him back, because DUI is allied with Sila's party, which practically was together. It was Sila and Taravari were in the same party, and when Sila decided to go with DUI, Taravari was opposed to him, so the party split, and now both these guys lead parties with the same name. They're arguing over who has the actual brand rights. So now Sila is saying, okay, you're not coming back, you're not joining the opposition. There is even possibility that if Taravari joins DUI, that Sila leaves, abandons DUI and joins the government. So it would be basically about the same sized party with the same name, one leaving the government, another party with the same name joining the government, except that the leader is a different person. So we'll see what happens here. The one problem for the government is that they still have solid majority in parliament, but the number of ethnic Albanian members of parliament in the government is now about a third of the total. And it used to be almost half. So this is now an issue. And I'm guessing that after the local elections, we'll see how the Vlen party does, how DUI does. And if Vlen wins more mayoral seats, more council members, then it will be strong pressure on DUI members of parliament. I don't know, Menduh Taci has two seats in parliament. Ziad Sela has 3-4.
He's still alive?
And they could switch sides. They could join the government. So then, the government would have won the local elections and would have, in the Albanian camp, of course they will win in the Macedonian camp, and they will have sufficient Albanian members of parliament to claim legitimacy in the Albanian camp. If DUI wins, and if DUI props up Taravari, so they win Gostivar. If Sela remains with them, so he helps DUI win Struga. If they win Saraj, Lipkovo, which is likely, there's going to be a fight over Čair. So if they win, maybe even Tetova, so if they win more seats than Vlen, then we might be up for early elections, because then, obviously, the government will not have the sufficient support among ethnic Albanians. And SDSM is trying, not SDSM actually, DUI is trying to use the mayor of Skopje to help themselves in this fight. So they're pulling her out back into the limelight, and she's doing these dramatic press conferences, crying, showing phone messages of threats she's receiving suddenly after being missing for a couple of years. She's coming out and she's accusing the mayor of Čair, who is from Vlen, from a faction that's left DUI. So he has a lot of bad blood with DUI. She's accusing him that he was allowing people in Čair to legalize homes without a permit, without meeting the requirement of the law, that they were backdating construction reports that the houses were built old, way back before a law on legalization was passed, and in fact they were built more recently, and that he shouldn't have allowed them to legalize the homes, and that he was probably taking bribes to allow this process to go ahead. Meantime, she's very close politically, some say even not so, thought even more beyond politically, with the Dui mayor of Sarai, where the situation is pretty much the same. Like, we expect that in every Albanian district there is a very lax approach to legalization. But now she's out and she's trying to snipe the Avlen mayor and to help doing this way. If actually she has the provokes state prosecutors to investigate only this one mayor in Chair, which is a must-win municipality in the Albanian camp, then the Albanian parties can say we won in the biggest urban district we have in Skopje, which is majority Albanian. Then, so if Dui wins this district, then they can say that they have won in the Albanian camp and that the government will be destabilized. So we have this whole drama at the moment with Danela Arsovska, the mayor of Skopje, being the biggest, supporter of Dui, which is not something we expected to see.
Well, yeah, she's been a real disappointment, and I hope Fomoro has learned its lesson that they don't go with an independent candidate next time.
Sure.
This time, it's coming. Yeah. So, speaking of Dewey and all of the politics and the intrigue and blah blah blah, I did think this was interesting that Artan Grubi, who fled the country, 6 months ago, he was the heir apparent to Ali Ahmeti when he dies, which can't be soon enough. So apparently he's in Albania and posted on Facebook birthday greetings from his mother, and his mother tells him, that's Artan Grubi, according to this media report, quote, your acts speak and make us proud and remind us of the years when the Albanians felt represented and masters of their own country, his mother wrote. So that's
touching.
Yeah, same old crap. Same old crap.
Yeah, that's their big story, that they had so many seats in government under SDSM, that they were running the country, and we were making decisions in this country, and now there is a party which is about the same size that Dui was under Gruevski, like a normal, reasonable size for their numbers and their the share of population in the country. They have as much power as they have like people in the country, as the number of people they represent, and it's a huge. They're using this, it's a huge insult, and they're saying that Vlen is underperforming as Albanian representatives.
I was just thinking, again, and I think I have said this phrase several times during our podcast today, Cvetin, that it's worth reiterating or it's worth remembering because, there's so much oldies but goodies, and one of them is, and again, this is we should have for our listeners a Macedonian content farmers bingo card, so that every time one of us mentions something that we mention a lot, like the whole issue of Dewey or Bulgaria, I don't think I've actually ever played bingo. But anyway, it's you get a spot or a mark or something like that. But this next one is, of course, the ethnic Albanian parties in Macedonia are not centered on an ideology in terms of right, left, or what is good for the country in terms of economic, creating jobs and wealth and things like that. It's all about what can the country give to our constituency, the Albanians. And that's a shame. And that's unfortunate because it would be so much better for everybody, for ethnic Albanians, for Macedonians, for Roma, for Turks, etc., if all of the political parties, whatever their ethnic makeup in Macedonia, were working for the greater good of the country, and starting with the defense of the country, and then, of course, in economic spheres, education, healthcare, etc. But they're not. They're just focused on what can you give us? Yeah. Greedy. I was looking at Artan's mother's quote, and she says again, Your acts speak and make us proud, remind us of the years when Albanians felt represented, master of the country. How different would it have been if she said, your acts speak and make us proud, remind us of the years when Albanians worked towards making Macedonia a much better place for everybody?
yeah.
You know, a very simple change, but it has nothing to do with that. And it just really ticks me off. But anyway.
Yeah, there is still reams of corruption to be investigated in DUI, and a big portion of their top officials have been charged and are under house arrest, including their biggest financier, the member of parliament Jahoski, whose son is charged in 160 million euros corruption scandal with oil procurement. But he was in detention, so it's not to intimidate witnesses. Then he was allowed in house arrest by the court. Then a couple of prosecutors who were in Katica Janova's team, they even allowed him to get a temporary passport and leave the country and go to Istanbul for a while. And then he came back eventually. But, this is the depth of corruption we're facing.
It's insane. Yeah.
At the same time, we have another major scandal breaking. So Vica Zaev acknowledged in an interview, admitted that he was personally skimming off a major contract for coal mining in Greece for the purposes of the Bitola coal plant. So there was a bunch of Albanian and Macedonian companies who were gaining this contract after Vica Zaev's brother, Zoran Zaev, left the country without sufficient coal reserves when the Ukraine war started. So basically energy prices shot up and we had no domestic resources. And Ahmeti, Zaev, all of them set up private companies for trading with electricity. So they were literally importing electricity while at hugely inflated prices, possibly even coordinating blackouts like stoppages at the Bitola plant when they would have like surplus of electricity to sell to the country. And but this was not widely known. It was suspected, but now he's even acknowledging that he was skimming off the contract. It's like tens of millions. So this is now a big issue. This is now prosecution investigations have mostly been going after Dewey in the past months. It's possible now that we will see Zaev's people, his brother, himself, in the dock.
Where is Zaev these days? And are they in Dubai or?
I mean, it's widely reported that they're investing in major real estate in Dubai, which is unusual. Usually we expect the Arabs to come here and invest in real estate here. So imagine how much he
So you're
stole.
saying the Zaev family is wealthier than the Arabs?
Yeah, they have something better than all oil. And he's in Strumica sometimes, it's reported, but keeping a low profile. And then a lot of the times in Dubai.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, I'm just looking at some economic news from Macedonia. Looks like first quarter GDP was 3.2%. And that's the third quarter in a row with over 3%, which is good. Needs to be better. But, as the British say, that's not nothing. Good on the government. I hope they can get that number on the up and up. Because that's what Macedonia needs. I mean, that's best for all of Macedonia's citizens, no matter what their ethnic.
Yeah, this is now finally having competent implementation of infrastructure projects, even though they're overpaid, like the Bechtel deal. But this was lacking in the previous government, and this is what makes the difference in the GDP growth. And Mickovsky said, listen, this is like the fourth biggest growth rate in Europe, which is true because, poorer countries, less developed countries grow faster than developed countries. And then the left, the opposition are, oh, look, he's crazy. He's saying that we are the fourth biggest And then they would fumble his statement, fourth biggest economic power, the fourth richest country in Europe. He's lying. Obviously, we're not the fourth richest country. He did not say that we're the fourth richest country. He said we're the fourth fastest growing country in Europe, which is true. But the left is trying to, what were they saying, spread fake news in the public. But it also shows how concerned they are because, competent construction of infrastructure projects and new infrastructure coming down the pipeline, holding firm on the national identity issues like solid growth rate. This is all a huge problem for them. So they're hoping, they're desperate that either Mickoski is somehow forced to accept a bad deal with Bulgaria, or that he has to deal with a much stronger Albanian partner soon, that he has to make some concessions, or that some other disaster strikes the country. Like a lot of their politics is based on the Kočani disaster. So, just basically hoping that something horrible happens in the country.
Well, that's not very patriotic.
That's all they have.
Yeah. That's all they have. Yeah, they're not. They're in a. The left in Macedonia is much like the left here in America. Is that they're in a terrible disarray, and they don't have a good message.
Yeah.
You got to have a good message.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, that's a good wrap, I think. Here we are, beginning of summer. School is ending in Macedonia the next couple of days. Then folks start thinking about vacations and whatnot.
Yeah,
so
people are already on vacation. It's a long weekend now, so.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, we in the United States are in our traditional summer, even though summer doesn't start until June 21st or so. Memorial Day, which was 2 weeks ago, and Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September, is considered, the summer period. Although, frankly, with schools here, it's because we have local jurisdiction of schools throughout the country. Schools start and stop, throughout the year, so that we don't have that anymore, like what Europe has, where it definitely ends on this day and that definitely starts on this day. So, but anyway, yeah, people are thinking about vacation, and the economy seems to be doing, okay. Hopefully it gets better. And we'll just keep following the news, and let's catch up again in another couple of weeks or so.
What's your next holiday? The president's birthday and the parade, upcoming parade?
That's actually, it's interesting because it's June 14 is President Trump's birthday. It is also Flag Day. And I don't know when Flag Day was designated as such. Obviously, it has nothing to do with Donald J. Trump's birthday. It just happens to be the same thing. But yes, he's got a big military parade planned. And he does like those. I'm just so glad he doesn't wear the full uniform with the epaulets and everything else, because then that would be a bad sign.
It can get worse.
I mean,
than what you had before.
It can't get worse. What is the Simpsons thing? It's this is the worst day of my life. No, it's the worst day so far of your life. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, we'll have an old-fashioned military parade. I think the last military parade we had was after the end of the first Gulf War under George H.W. Bush.
Well, he just subdued the rebels in California, so he's due a parade, and the rebels in the White House and the Space Force. So with Elon exiled to Mars.
The battle between Musk and Trump is going to be nothing but a blip. It's already faded off the ether. So it's I mean, I think both men have huge egos, and they have they're both brilliant in some ways and absolutely crazy in other ways. But I think they're smart enough to know that this doesn't do anybody any good. So just let it fade away.
Just happy that the brief period of cooperation between them focused on the things that really matter, and that's dismantling USAID. So I'm happy for the memories.
Good. Well, on that note, that's a good way to end then. So let's, it's good talking to you, and let's catch up again in a few weeks.
Sure, buddy. Take care.